I never imagined that a simple errand could change my life so dramatically. It all started on a Friday afternoon when my mom asked me to deliver some homemade cupcakes to her friend. Little did I know that this innocent task would lead to an experience that would leave me both shocked and intrigued. My name is Alex, and I was a high school student at the time. It had been a grueling week of exams, and all I wanted to do was head home and relax. But as I was leaving school, my mom caught me and asked if I could do her a quick favor. "Alex, honey," she said, her eyes gleaming with excitement, "I've just baked some cupcakes for the first time, and I'd love for my friend Sarah to try them. Could you drop them off at her house on your way home?" I could see how proud she was of her baking accomplishment, and despite my exhaustion, I couldn't bring myself to disappoint her. "Sure, Mom," I replied, mustering a smile. "I'll take them over right now." She handed me a plate piled high with colorful cupcakes, each one decorated with swirls of frosting. The sweet aroma wafted up to my nose, making my stomach growl. I carefully took the plate and set off towards Sarah's house, which was just a few blocks away. As I walked, my mind wandered. I had met Sarah a few times before at various gatherings my mom had hosted. She always struck me as a kind, mature woman, the type who probably spent her free time reading books or tending to her garden. Never in a million years would I have guessed what I was about to discover. Arriving at Sarah's house, I rang the doorbell and waited. No answer. I rang again, thinking maybe she hadn't heard the first time. Still nothing. Disappointment washed over me as I realized she might not be home. I was about to leave when something caught my eye. The front window was slightly ajar, and through the glass, I could see movement inside. Curiosity got the better of me, and I peered in, hoping to catch Sarah's attention. What I saw made my jaw drop. There was Sarah, sitting on her couch, her eyes glued to her phone. But it wasn't the fact that she was on her phone that shocked me, it was what she was watching. From my angle, I could clearly see the screen, and the content was decidedly adult in nature. My cheeks burned with embarrassment, and I felt like I was intruding on something incredibly private. I tried to look away, but I was frozen in place, my mind reeling from the unexpected sight. This was Sarah, my mom's friend, a woman I had always seen as respectable and proper. And here she was indulging in something so scandalous. As I stood there, conflicted and confused, disaster struck. The plate of cupcakes slipped from my grasp, crashing to the ground with a loud clatter. The noise shattered the silence, and I saw Sarah's head snap up, her eyes wide with surprise. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice laced with panic. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. I knew I had to say something, to explain my presence, but my voice seemed to have abandoned me. Finally, I managed to stammer out a response. Hi, Sarah?"
"It's me, Alex."
I brought some cupcakes for my mom." Sarah quickly made her way to the window, her expression a mix of shock and something else I couldn't quite identify. "Alex, how long have you been standing there?" I swallowed hard, trying to calm my nerves. "I just got here." I lied, not wanting to admit what I had seen. "I'm sorry about the cupcakes. I didn't mean to drop them." To my surprise, Sarah's face softened into a smile.
"It's all right, Alex.
"Why don't you come inside? We can clean up the mess and have a chat." As I followed her into the house, my mind was racing. How was I going to face her after what I had seen? Would she be angry? Embarrassed? I had no idea what to expect, but I knew one thing for certain: this visit was about to take a very unexpected turn. Sarah led me to the living room, the very place where I had spotted her just moments ago. The air felt thick with tension, or maybe that was just my imagination running wild. She gestured for me to sit on the couch, the same couch where she had been. "Well, I try not to think about that." "So, Alex," Sarah began, her voice surprisingly calm, "I know you saw what I was watching." My face felt like it was on fire. I wanted to deny it, to pretend I hadn't seen anything, but the words wouldn't come. Sarah must have sensed my discomfort, because she let out a soft laugh. "It's okay. You don't have to be embarrassed. We're both adults here, aren't we?" I nodded hesitantly, even though I didn't feel very adult at that moment. I felt more like a kid who had accidentally stumbled into a world I wasn't prepared for. Sarah continued, her tone becoming more serious.
What you saw.
It's a natural part of life, Alex. Everyone has desires and curiosities. It's nothing to be ashamed of. As she spoke, Sarah moved closer to me on the couch. I could smell her perfume, a sweet, intoxicating scent that made my head spin. She placed a hand on my shoulder, and I felt a jolt of electricity run through my body. You know, Alex, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. You remind me a lot of the guy in that video. My eyes widened in shock. Was she really saying what I thought she was saying? I tried to form a coherent response, but my brain seemed to have short-circuited. Sarah's hand moved from my shoulder to my back, gently caressing me. We could explore some things together if you're interested, but you have to promise me that this stays between us.
Can you do that?
I sat there, frozen, unable to process what was happening. Sarah took my silence as agreement and smiled. Silence means yes, she said, gently pushing me back onto the couch. As Sarah began to remove my shirt, followed by her own, a whirlwind of emotions swept through me. Fear, excitement, curiosity, and confusion all battled for dominance in my mind. This was so far beyond anything I had ever experienced, and I had no idea how to react. Sarah reached for a bottle of oil, her movements slow and deliberate. I've always wanted to do this, she murmured, her eyes locked on mine. And thanks to you, I finally can. As she began to apply the oil to my body, I remained silent, my mind struggling to catch up with what was happening. It was my first time in a situation like this, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to take a leap into the unknown. Part of me wanted to run, to escape this surreal scenario and pretend it never happened. But another part of me, a part one hadn't even known existed until that moment, was curious, excited even. As Sarah's hands moved over my body, I found myself relaxing into her touch, my fears slowly melting away. I closed my eyes, letting the sensations wash over me. The smooth glide of the oil, the warmth of Sarah's hands, the intoxicating scent of her perfume, it all combined to create an experience unlike anything I had ever known. As Sarah's hands moved lower, I felt a surge of embarrassment mixed with anticipation. She noticed my reaction and smiled. It's all right, she whispered, just relax and enjoy. And so I did. I let myself get lost in the moment, pushed all thoughts of right and wrong out of my mind, and simply experienced. Sarah's touch was gentle yet confident, guiding me through sensations I had never felt before. Time seemed to lose all meaning. I couldn't have said how long we spent there, exploring and discovering. All I knew was that when it was over I felt different. Changed. Like I had crossed some invisible threshold into a new phase of my life. As I prepared to leave, Sarah leaned in close, her breath tickling my ear. Remember, this is our little secret, she whispered. No one else needs to know. I nodded, still in a daze from everything that had happened. As I walked out the door, Sarah called after me. Tell your mom thanks for the cupcakes. She can make them anytime, and you're always welcome to bring them over. The walk home was a blur. My mind was reeling, trying to process everything that had just occurred. I felt a mix of emotions, guilt, excitement, confusion, and a strange sense of pride. I knew that what had happened with Sarah was wrong on many levels, but I couldn't deny the thrill it had given me. As I approached my house, I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. I couldn't let my mom see how shaken up I was. I plastered on a smile and walked through the door, ready to face whatever questions she might have about my delivery errand. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. My encounter with Sarah had opened up a whole new world to me, one that I would continue to explore in ways I never could have imagined. But for now, I had to focus on acting normal and keeping our secret safe. As I lay in bed that night, my mind kept replaying the events of the afternoon. I knew that my life had changed irrevocably, and I was both terrified and exhilarated by what the future might hold. One thing was certain, I would never look at a plate of cupcakes the same way again. The days following my unexpected encounter with Sarah passed in a blur. I went through the motions of my daily routine, attending classes, doing homework, hanging out with friends, but my mind constantly drifted back to that afternoon. The memory of Sarah's touch, Her whispered words and the intoxicating mix of emotions I had experienced lingered like a vivid dream. I found myself stealing glances at my phone, half expecting to see a message from Sarah. But there was nothing. Part of me was relieved after all. What had happened was wrong on so many levels. But another part, a part one was ashamed to admit even to myself, felt a twinge of disappointment. It was about a week later when my mom approached me with another batch of freshly baked cupcakes. "Alex, honey," she said, her face beaming with pride, "I've been practicing, and I think I've really nailed the recipe this time. Would you mind taking some over to Sarah again?" My heart leapt into my throat. I tried to keep my voice steady as I replied, "Sure, Mom, no problem." As I walked the familiar route to Sarah's house, my palms grew sweaty and my heart raced. What would happen this time? Would Sarah act like nothing had occurred between us? Or would she? I pushed the thought away, telling myself I was being ridiculous. I rang the doorbell, half hoping Sarah wouldn't be home. But within moments, the door swung open, and there she stood. Sarah's eyes lit up when she saw me, a smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Alex," she said, her voice warm and inviting. What a pleasant surprise.
Come in, come in."
I stepped inside, the scent of her perfume immediately enveloping me, bringing back a flood of memories. "My mom made more cupcakes," I stammered, holding out the plate. Sarah took the plate from me, her fingers brushing against mine in a way that seemed far from accidental. "How thoughtful," she murmured. "Why don't you stay for a while? We could talk." The way she said talk made it clear that conversation wasn't what she had in mind. I knew I should leave, that I should make an excuse and run. But instead, I found myself nodding, following her into the living room. Sarah set the cupcakes aside and turned to face me. "I've been thinking about you, Alex," she said, her voice low and husky, "about what we shared last time." I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. "I've been thinking about it too," I admitted. Sarah stepped closer, her hand reaching out to caress my cheek. "Would you like to explore more?"
she asked.
"Learn things they don't teach you in school?" My brain screamed at me to say no, to leave, to do the right thing. But my body had other ideas. I nodded, unable to form words. What followed was an afternoon of discovery and sensation. Sarah took her time, showing me things I had only ever fantasized about. Her hands and lips seemed to know exactly where to touch, how to move. I was clay in her expert hands, molded and shaped by her desires. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself growing bolder, more confident. I started to reciprocate, guided by Sarah's gentle instructions and encouraging murmurs. The feeling of power, of being able to elicit sighs and moans from this beautiful, experienced woman, was intoxicating. When it was over, we lay tangled together on the couch, our breathing slowly returning to normal. Sarah ran her fingers through my hair, a contented smile on her face. "You're a quick learner, Alex," she purred. "We're going to have so much fun together." I should have felt guilty, ashamed, and part of me did. But a larger part felt exhilarated, alive in a way I never had before. Sarah had opened up a whole new world to me, and I was eager to explore every inch of it. As I prepared to leave, Sarah pulled me in for one last, lingering kiss. "Remember," she whispered against my lips, "this is our secret. No one else can know." I nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. What we were doing was wrong, taboo. If anyone found out, the consequences would be severe. But the thrill of the forbidden only added to the excitement. Over the next few weeks, I found myself making excuses to visit Sarah's house. Sometimes I brought cupcakes, other times I invented reasons a book one needed to borrow, a message from my mom. Each visit was a new adventure, a chance to learn and experience more. Sarah was an attentive teacher, always patient, always encouraging. Under her tutelage, I discovered things about my body and hers that I never knew existed. We explored fantasies, pushed boundaries, and reveled in the intensity of our secret affair. But as exhilarating as it was, there was always an undercurrent of guilt. I knew what we were doing was wrong. Sarah was my mom's friend, old enough to be my own mother. I was betraying my parents' trust, engaging in something that could destroy families and reputations if discovered. There were moments, usually late at night when I was alone with my thoughts, that the full weight of what I was doing would hit me. I'd feel a crushing sense of shame, promising myself that I would end things with Sarah, that I would be the responsible one, and put a stop to our illicit encounters. But then I'd see her again, smell her perfume, feel her touch, and all my resolve would crumble. The pull of desire, the thrill of the forbidden, was simply too strong to resist. One afternoon, as we lay together in the afterglow of another passionate encounter, Sarah propped herself up on one elbow, looking at me intently. "Alex," she said, her voice serious, "you know this can't last forever, right?" I felt a pang in my chest. Even though I knew she was right, hearing her say it hurt more than I expected. "I know," I replied softly. Sarah stroked my cheek gently. "You're young with your whole life ahead of you. I don't want to hold you back or complicate your life more than I already have." I wanted to protest, to tell her that she wasn't complicating anything, that what we had was special, but I knew it would be a lie. Our relationship, if you could call it that, was built on secrecy and forbidden desire. It wasn't sustainable, no matter how much I might wish it was. "I understand," I said, trying to keep the emotion out of my voice, "but we don't have to end it right now, do we?" Sarah smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "No, not right now. But soon, Alex. We need to be prepared for that." As I left Sarah's house that day, I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't quite untangle. Sadness at the thought of our affair ending, relief that we had acknowledged its temporary nature, fear of what the future might hold, and a lingering excitement from our latest encounter. I knew Sarah was right. What we were doing shouldn't last. But for now, I was determined to savor every moment, to learn and experience as much as I could. Because deep down, I knew that this chapter of my life, as wrong as it might be, was shaping me in ways I was only beginning to understand. As I walked home, my mind racing with thoughts of Sarah and our uncertain future, I couldn't help but wonder, how would this all end? And more importantly, who would I be when it was over? The weeks turned into months, and my secret affair with Sarah continued. Each encounter brought new experiences, pushing the boundaries of what I thought I knew about intimacy and desire. But with each passing day, the weight of our secret grew heavier. I found myself constantly on edge, afraid that someone would discover what was happening between us. Every time my mom mentioned Sarah's name, I felt a jolt of panic. When friends asked why I was always busy after school, I fumbled for excuses. The lies were starting to pile up, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep them straight. One afternoon, as Sarah and I lay tangled together on her bed, she turned to me with a serious expression. "Alex," she said softly, "I think it's time we talked about ending this." Even though I had known this moment was coming, hearing the words out loud felt like a punch to the gut. "Why now?" I asked, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. Sarah sighed, running her fingers through my hair. "We always knew this couldn't last forever. You're about to start your senior year, and you should be focusing on your future, not sneaking around with me." I knew she was right, but that didn't make it any easier to accept. "But what if I don't want it to end?" I protested weakly. Sarah cupped my face in her hands, her eyes filled with a mix of affection and sadness. "Oh, Alex," she said, "what we've had has been incredible, but it's not real life. You deserve to experience normal teenage relationships, to go to prom, to have a college sweetheart. I don't want to rob you of those experiences." As much as it hurt, I couldn't argue with her logic. Our relationship, if you could call it that, existed in a bubble. It was intense and exciting, but it wasn't sustainable. We could never go on a real date, never introduce each other to friends or family, never have a future together. "I understand," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "But can we have one last time together?" Sarah smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "I think we can arrange that." What followed was a bittersweet symphony of passion and tenderness. We took our time, savoring every touch, every kiss, every sensation. It was as if we were trying to memorize each other, to burn this final encounter into our memories forever. When it was over, we lay together in silence, the reality of our situation settling over us like a heavy blanket. Sarah was the first to speak. "You know, Alex," she said, her voice soft. "I hope you don't regret this."
Us.
I thought about it for a moment. Did I regret what had happened between us? It was complicated. What we had done was wrong on so many levels, and the guilt of betraying my parents' trust would likely stay with me for a long time. But at the same time, I couldn't deny that my experiences with Sarah had changed me, had opened my eyes to a world of pleasure and intimacy I never knew existed. "I don't regret it," I said finally. "It's been educational." Sarah laughed at that, a genuine, warm sound that made my heart ache. "Educational," she repeated. "Well, I'm glad I could be of service, Professor." We shared one last kiss before I got dressed and prepared to leave. As I stood at her door, Sarah pulled me into a tight hug. "Take care of yourself, Alex," she whispered. "And remember what we had. It stays between us." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. As I walked home for the last time, my emotions were a tangled mess, relief that the stress of keeping our secret was over, sadness at losing the intimacy and excitement Sarah had brought into my life, fear of what the future might hold, and underneath it all, a gnawing sense of guilt that I suspected would never fully go away. The next few weeks were difficult. I found myself instinctively heading towards Sarah's house after school, only to remember that chapter of my life was closed. I missed the thrill of our encounters, the way she made me feel desired and mature. But slowly, day by day, I started to adjust to my new normal. As my senior year progressed, I threw myself into my studies and extracurricular activities. I went on a few dates with girls my own age, fumbling through the awkward rituals of teenage romance. It felt strange at first, almost childish compared to what I had experienced with Sarah. But I gradually began to appreciate the simple joys of holding hands in the hallway, of stolen kisses behind the bleachers, of the butterflies in my stomach before a date. I saw Sarah a few times at various gatherings my mom hosted. We were polite but distant, exchanging pleasantries like casual acquaintances. If anyone noticed the charged undercurrent between us, they didn't mention it. Sarah seemed happy, laughing with the other adults, and I was glad to see her moving on with her life. As graduation approached, I found myself reflecting on the past year and everything that had happened. The affair with Sarah felt like a dream now, something that had happened to someone else. But I knew the impact it had on me was real and lasting. I had learned about desire, about the power of touch and intimacy. I had experienced the thrill of the forbidden, the weight of keeping a monumental secret. I had tasted the bittersweet mix of pleasure and guilt, of excitement and fear. These experiences had shaped me, for better or worse, into the person I was becoming. On the night of my graduation, as I stood in my cap and gown surrounded by cheering family and friends, I caught sight of Sarah in the crowd. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and she gave me a small, secret smile. In that instant, I felt a flood of memories wash over me: the taste of her lips, the feel of her skin, the sound of her whispered instructions. But then the moment passed, and Sarah turned away, lost in conversation with another parent. And I realized that while our affair would always be a part of me, it no longer defined me. It was a chapter in my life that was now closed, a secret I would carry with me but no longer be burdened by. As I moved my tassel from right to left, symbolizing my transition from high school student to graduate, I felt a sense of freedom and possibility. The future stretched out before me, full of potential and new experiences. I was ready to embrace it, carrying the lessons I had learned both in and out of the classroom with me into the next chapter of my life. That night, as I lay in bed reflecting on the day's events, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Sarah. "Congratulations, Alex," it read. "The world is yours now. Make the most of it." I smiled, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Gratitude for the experiences we had shared. Sadness for the innocence I had lost. Hope for the future that lay ahead. And underneath it all, a quiet acceptance of the person I had become. I typed out a simple reply: "Thank you for everything." Then I deleted Sarah's number from my phone, symbolically closing that chapter of my life for good. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this point. The unexpected delivery of cupcakes that had changed everything. The months of secret encounters and stolen moments. The bittersweet ending and the process of moving on. I knew that the memories of my time with Sarah would always be with me, a hidden part of my past that had shaped my present and would influence my future. But I also knew that I was more than just those experiences. I was Alex, high school graduate, soon-to-be college student, and young adult ready to take on the world. Whatever challenges and adventures lay ahead, I felt prepared to face them. After all, I had already navigated one of the most complex and intense experiences of my life. Everything else, I thought with a smile, would be a piece of cake.